Alright, so this is Nebraska Under a Big Red Sky by Joel Sartore, the flip through. So I'm just gonna do a quick flip through here. So in the front here, he gives basically the geography of where he's from, who he is. But this page here, he kind of talks about the Nebraska assignment, as he calls it, a cheap date. So with National Geographic, he really wanted an assignment where he can work in his home state of Nebraska. He wanted to photograph and show the world, basically, the community that he grew up in, the things that make him who he is, the things he loves about Nebraska. So when he pitched this pitch to him, he was determined to be the least expensive photographer they had ever seen. That was how he pitched it. He goes, you wouldn't have to pay for plane tickets, you wouldn't have to pay for like room and board, because he would be able to sleep in his own bed at his home in Lincoln, or he can sleep in the bed of his Chevy S10 when he was not close enough to his home to stay there overnight. So when they finally agreed to give him this assignment, basically an assignment takes 8 weeks, and he goes, needless to say, I went over my 8 weeks. So basically, he definitely spent a lot of extra time doing the work that he wanted to do and produce, because he just didn't want the assignment to end. He said that I usually couldn't wait for the tremendous relief that came with a shoot's end. Not this time, though. Several years ago, I proposed that we do a story on the state of Nebraska. Besides giving me a chance to explore my home territory, a story like this would allow me to spend a lot of time with my wife and 2 children. So basically, he wanted not only to produce work about what his hometown was, he also wanted to spend more time with his small children and his wife, and just be with them as a family. Which would make sense after you see his work about Nebraska. So basically, when he was growing up, his home was right next to the Offutt Air Force Base, the Offutt Air Force Base, and this is an aerial picture that he had worked really, really hard on to get. He said he was surprised at how difficult it was to get something set up with them to be able to get this aerial shot. So he did a lot of work looking at the culture and the people of Nebraska more than like the geography or the wildlife there, despite him being a wildlife extinct, being a photographer that goes and photographs the wildlife that is going extinct and are rare to find. So he does do some pictures in here with the wildlife, but a lot of it, the majority of it, is community. And we're gonna flip right on over through a couple of these. And so he actually does put in some descriptions of his pieces. But we're going to go over to this first one here. So basically, this is an image of farmers that had just gotten done going and working out on the field. They've been out since 4 in the morning. Lunch is their biggest meal of the day, their favorite meal. So when they leave at 4 in the morning, they go out so early so that way they're home in time. They're done, ready to go for this potluck lunch that they do with their friends and family. They don't call it lunch where they're at, they call it supper or dinner. So that's their dinner meal because they've been up so early, they go to bed fairly early. But they do it as a community. They do a lot of ranching, rodeos, festivals. One of the things that I found interesting was mud volleyball. So I guess they play in this mud pit filled with water, and they do this volleyball tournament through all of that. And they come out muddy, dirty, But as you can see on the looks of these girls' faces, the gentleman's face, it's a very, very fun thing for them to do. They get really excited about it. Then we have here next is the chicken festival. He goes and puts it. I'm going to read the caption for this because I kind of found it a little bit interesting, and it explains it better than I would just talking about the image itself. So he goes, "My favorite wacky thing about Nebraska is the Wayne Chicken Show. This town has a long-standing poultry feud with nearby Wakefield, which actually produces millions of chickens and eggs every year. Wayne does not, but they have a festival anyway. Wakefield feels ripped off, and I can't say that I blame them." So then here's football. Football's a big thing in their town. He does a little series on the football towards the end of the book. This image here, he talks about small town, and he goes with the caption, "This tells you how a small town of Milligan, how small the town of Milligan is. After a parade one day, the band members simply left their instruments on Main Street. And why worry? They knew nobody would be driving down the street because everyone in town was at the same pep rally they were headed to." So when he was taking this image here, he actually came across all these people that were sitting in this truck. They didn't know him, he didn't know them, but they were so friendly and so kind. They were talking to him throughout the fireworks show. They offered him a beer. Just kind of covers the whole friendliness aspect of what he was trying to convey within the state of Nebraska. How friendly they are, how small town they are, how close-knit. Here would be a traditional dinner, like a holiday dinner that they would have there, with their traditions. They're praying at the table. Religion and church is very, very popular within the state of Nebraska, and so that is something that is, I guess, like ritualistic throughout their everyday lives. Music, cowboys, those were big things within the Nebraska. Football. So then he gets into like a little bit more of the geography, the animals of the area. So here's some bald eagles, and here are some pet canaries. In the caption he goes, "Sometimes you don't have to look very far for wildlife. After having goldfinches repeatedly fly into the window at my farm, I figured I'd better put up a feeder to distract them. In the spring, when they're in full breeding plumage, it's like having your own flock of pet canaries." And here's some more of the wildlife. Some bison. Hunting was a big one. Even little kids get involved with the hunting. Everyone wears orange so you can be seen. Little kids are taught that from a young age growing up. It's just commonality for them. Then here's the farming. Little kids are out on the farm. When they're not old enough to ride the tractors. If they're not old enough to, let me read the caption here. The boy was not old enough to drive the combine, but he was old enough to drive the tractor. Driving the tractor means you get bored sometimes. The combine is where all the action is. So we were just passing time out in the wheat field, waiting for the combine to dump his grain into the grain cart behind the tractor. It's subtle stuff, but Nebraska is like that at times. That's very comforting to me, and I want it to stay that way. I like the fact that it seems like 1958 here. Within the farming, there's a lot of young teens, young adults that go and they detassel the corn. He liked this image in particular. This was one of his favorites that he got throughout the whole throughout the whole like shooting process. He liked this one because it was natural. The kids weren't posing. They weren't focusing on the fact that he was taking the pictures. They were too distracted by the fact that at that moment they were being told how much money they were going to make that day. And so their complete focus was anticipation. They were waiting for that amount to be named. little kids, they get involved on the farm. They work the farm just like their parents do. They're out there day in and day out when they're not in school. Then you get into the football, where Nebraska football is really, really popular. Then here is a picture that he got inside the Air Force base that he lived next to. He really, really enjoyed being able to get a little tour on the inside. Shows family life here, where you're all interacting with one another. Parents are helping children with their schoolwork. A little bit of the geography, how much plants life there is, the layout of the little town. Again, with the festivals, there's a lot of in-person activities that you do together as a community to celebrate, or just to pass time. There's a lot of theater works there. Bonfires for the young adults, teenagers, swimming in the lake or ocean. I think it's a lake. Yeah, so that's basically what he likes to convey there. There's a little picture of him. And yeah, I think that's it.